Yeah, I mean, this just to kind of give some insight as to where we're waiting for people to come on. Why we are doing this particular topic is that we were looking at for something kind of interesting that what people would find kind of insightful, and it's something when we got into this, myself and Claire, is the interesting trends in the marketplace. We were like seeing, because we're an email security company first, that threats are not declining, or the actual compromises are not declining. People are still falling for phishing scams, and yet when you look at the stats and the information that like Claire is going to present, actual spending on security awareness, phishing awareness, compliance training, all these things have never been actually higher, and they're growing significantly all the time, and yet it doesn't seem to be having an effect on people still doing silly things, because people are still the main vector of attack for almost every compromise that actually happens. So that's where this came from, and we try to give some background information on what's from lots of different sources as to what the current situation is, and also it's just something that we go through then some ideas that we have that maybe help people in actually making their training more effective, and making protecting their users really, and staff. Rianka's in the background here pulling all the strings, so she's recording this. And also, if you have any questions, you can pop them into the chat, and then we'll do a Q&A thing at the end. Like, there's no set time on this, so it'll probably take 20-30 minutes to go through the slides, and then we can take as many questions as you want, make it interactive as you want afterwards. Because again, we'd love to hear like what your feelings are in regards to this, and what your current experiences are in relation to your own security awareness programs. Because I know from looking at the list of attendees, a lot of people here are existing clients, and there's a few new ones as well. And I know a lot of you are even using us for doing your managed security awareness training. So again, it'd be interesting to have feedback on that. So bearing that in mind, I think we've now got a fair number of people actually on the call. It's gone way up now. So I think we'll start. So I'm going to hand over to Claire because I've done kind of my introduction. Claire, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Dave Mason, and I'm a publicist, and I work with Niall and Rianka.
Very good.
So I'll jump straight in. As Niall has shared, we're taking a look at some of the really interesting trends that we see as we put together our content every month, and we obviously always want to make sure that the information that we're sharing with our audience is information that's really going to make a difference to your business or organizations that you're running. And one of the things that for me as a publicist, obviously part of my day job, is to really keep track of what we're seeing reported in the B2B media. I work very much on the business side of things, and we see cybersecurity hacks reported all the time. Now, way back in the day, these probably made headlines, and of course, on occasion, a cybersecurity hack still does make the headline. But in many ways, these stories have become by the by, in the sense that they're being reported so frequently that we realize there's definitely a story to tell here. So how we've phrased this is really that there's a paradox, in the sense that there are verified stats that share with us that nearly all organizations are actually spending budget on phishing prevention, and doing their best to raise cybersecurity awareness among their staff and among the people that work for their organization. So we see that billions is being spent on an annual basis, yet we're not seeing a correlating effect on the amount of phishing incidences or cybersecurity incidents that are decreasing. We're not seeing that at all. In actual fact, we're seeing the very opposite. We're seeing them increase. So why isn't training reducing real world risk? And Niall's got a lot more to share on that.
Well, yeah, over the next few slides, I'll take you through. Yeah, but we've seen that knowledge imparted does not equal behavioural change. I mean, that's one thing we'll see across this. Like, it's how it's been done. So
if we jump to the next slide, we see it really speaks for itself in many ways. So we see stats, the most recent stats that are available to us, as we see globally, in 2023, which is 2 years ago now, 1.5 going on 2 years ago now, $5.6 billion was spent on cybersecurity awareness training. And we can see that this is really almost doubling in 2027, which is really only 2 years from now, to be a spend of $10 billion per year. So a lot of money. And yet we're not seeing a correlating decrease in the amount of cybersecurity incidents decreasing. We're not seeing that at all. Here, this slide really shows we've gone from 2022 to 2025. These are verified stats that we've been able to find and to share with you in terms of what the projected global cost has been per annum in these horrible breaches happening, and then also what we're seeing from a year-on-year increase, as well as what has been driving these cybersecurity hacks or incidents that are really being caused by malicious actors, but are causing a lot of havoc, both from a cost perspective as well as a reputation issue.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is down, I see it with our own clients, not just our own clients, but like just across the board, is there's a very much a compliance mindset, and people are viewing it as I don't want to say a box-ticking exercise, but to get their cyber insurance, to get their ISO certification, to get their, cyber kind of risk policy signed off, whatever organization they're in, and they're not actually, doing it to actually really change behavior. And like training for rule following doesn't change habit, and it actually has a very low actual reduction on risk to the organization. So that's something we've definitely seen, and we're seeing that across the board. It's more about most organizations, unfortunately, are looking at a compliance and just showing that they're actually doing something rather than actually really trying to change behavior.
When we look at the social engineering aspect, I also think that's one of the areas that perhaps the media is not really reporting to the degree that they should be reporting, because any article or news report that I'm reading in terms of how journalists cover cybersecurity hacks or phishing, which is one type of cybersecurity hack, is they're always looking at the code element of it, or where the override came in, rather than the actual human psychology element, which is really, as you always say, now that's the biggest vector to any attacks happening. And when we look at this, I have to stick up my hand. I mean, this was one of the conversations you, Rianka, and I were having in preparation for this webinar, where I was saying, I don't think of myself as a genius, but I like to consider myself as someone who's intelligent and switched on to these threats that appear online. But actually, I got caught out with a fake visa. I was traveling and I had to apply for a visa online, and I clicked on a link that was not above board at all. It was a very problematic link, and it ended up, now thankfully it didn't cost me a fortune in what I spent, but it obviously had a knock-on effect in the sense that I had to go and cancel that that bank card, because all of a sudden I had opened myself up to being to have a much more serious problem by clicking on a really problematic link. So the monkey brain element definitely does override logical decision making, and we're not seeing that being reported in the media. We always see, which AI tool did it or whatever the case was, but rather than the people
it's
element.
Human nature. The monkey brain is 10 times stronger than your logical brain, and they create an actual kind of environment where you are suddenly put into panic mode, fight or flight, and people make bad decisions in those scenarios, and that's what they're always trying to drive is drive that kind of that monkey mindset that you suddenly react, oh my god. And especially, I think you had up there on the previous slide, actually, when I go back to it, you had the DPD thing. I mean, everyone is getting stuff delivered at the moment, and I come back to your example. No, I didn't. But I really, really nearly engaged with one the other day because I was expecting a parcel, and it was from DPD. And I looked at it properly, and there was a text on. It wasn't actually an email; it was actually a text on my phone. And I had to look at it a few times before I actually realised it was actually fraudulent. But again, and that's me who's in the industry, and we see this every day. So God help just normal Joe Soap out there, and the risk of this, and because we talk about AI and everything else, but it is making it a lot easier for them to do these things. And then when they do get into your account, especially in email, we're seeing really important, really serious risks with regards to how, especially organizations who have a 365, which is most people nowadays, and if they have Copilot enabled, that is it's so useful to the hackers, because it means they can within minutes have a hyper personalized exploit done in the right tone. And say, if I was sending an email to Claire in the way I normally speak to Claire, the way she'd respond to me, all the people involved in that email chain, that they'll have PO numbers, they'll have information on the products. So it'll be almost impossible for somebody, to actually discern this from a real email, and it's actually a very sophisticated spear phishing email. So the way people actually use now some of these new tools like Copilot has to be really cleverly, clearly kind of controlled, because there's also things like zero-click exploits that can be delivered via email that the user has to do nothing to engage and just has to arrive in their account and they just open it and then it's activated. And as people have really strict kind of permissioning around how kind of they use Copilot, because then once it's in, it can go across the whole estate to all the different drives you have, OneDrive, SharePoint, your Excel, PowerPoint, Word, all these documents are suddenly all in play and can be mined for information, whether they want to take that information, exfiltrate it, or actually use it for some spear phishing type campaigns to you or to people you do business with, which is even worse from a reputational perspective. So there's a lot to be. Sorry, you can go move on. There's a lot to be a lot to watch out for there.
Yeah, really carrying on from that, like when we're talking about the DPD delivery example, or me with my fake Visa link that I clicked and then paid for, and then I had to go and do the proper Visa link in the anyway, and carry on cancelling bank cards and all that kind of stuff. There's also then those happen on an individual level, and maybe there is an element of the malicious actors sort of taking their chances on that front. But when it comes to transitions in companies, when there's big changes with companies and organizations, these are also very vulnerable moments, but they're happening on a much more collective scale. And of course, from the point of view of mergers and acquisitions, let's say, that's being reported in the news. Yeah. So it's not even a case then that the baddies have to sit there and try and figure out the information. They've got it at their fingertips with what's being reported in the news media. And you were talking about the monkey brain element where, we're overriding our logical, maybe more cool-headed sense of knowing what's right and wrong with panic and, urgency, those things, those types of emotional states. And that would be running very high, wouldn't it, during a...
Well, exactly. People have job insecurity. People don't know who they're, people disappear out of organizations. Who they don't even know who they should be talking to. Is that the person still there? Is that someone could come in and say, oh, I'm the new IT director and we're part of the company that took you over, so I need this information from you. And people are going to engage. New customers coming on board, new big projects. People are unsure. When there's change, when there's flux, and that it's read reasonably in the public domain. Like a lot of people on this call are from organizations of that size, that people would know that you're being part of a merger acquisition, you're onboarding a large project or a customer or offboarding them or whatever, that you've had a big change in regards to your software if it's in the news, you've moved from one vendor to another vendor. That's a huge one as well, people taking advantage of those kind of, that flux. And it's actually to warn, again, to train your staff to be ultra kind of sensitive to things and double check when you're going through any of these scenarios, because these are when the feeding frenzy really actually happens, and people are more likely to actually get compromised.
So it's the human factor that's really the common denominator, whether it's an individual being targeted or whether it's a company or an organization being targeted. And the whole piece around, which is actually quite a sobering thought and one that we wish was more positive, but actually just raising awareness doesn't correlate to having an impact on behavioral change. Do you want to share more about that, Farah?
Yeah, so again, this is going back to what we're saying. So people instinctively hate things like MFA, security checks, complex passwords, using VPNs. and the bad actors again take advantage of that, because we'll take the point of least resistance to actually to get something done from a productivity perspective. And again, organizations have to be careful that if they have too much of this stuff in place, then they actually stop work happening and they have a very disgruntled workforce. So it's actually finding that balance of empowering people to be aware and to be cognizant of the threats, but not actually stopping them doing their job.
And the second point on that slide is maybe the one that's, really kind of speaks to the overall theme of this whole presentation, which is that staff are often disengaged. That's not necessarily making a dig at individuals. It's just that you've got a very long to-do list, you've got thousands of commitments, or maybe that's an exaggeration, but you've got a lot of things you need to do by the end of your working day. You've got different teams relying on you. So even after training, we see that this doesn't necessarily change.
Well, if the training isn't personalized and isn't relevant and contextually relevant to those people, they'll just ignore it. If you're just doing generic kind of voucher, like Amazon vouchers or like Apple vouchers or whatever, or doing things like Microsoft sign-on pages, which have been done 100 times, they've seen it before. If you're just kind of going through the motions for the training, people won't engage. They'll just take that's definitely a kind of fishy one, so I won't engage with that. So they're not really learning anything. Oh God, you see that the lads have sent out another, just watch it, and they'll even tell other people around them that that there's a phishing test obviously going on. So just see it there. So if people like the people running the actual tests, you only get out of it as much as you put into it, and don't expect your staff to get anything out of it if you haven't put much into it. It'll have the same net effect.
So this really brings us to the point of why current training fails. And again, if we just go back to the first or second slide, I think it was the second slide I showed, where we see the immense amount of money that is being spent on training that is really having no impact at all from the point of view of changing behavior. But then the other side of that is the huge cost that organizations and companies are paying for this. So we're seeing, I've seen one or two articles describe this kind of training as compliance theatre. It's not a term that I've seen used often, but actually I think that really captures exactly what we're talking about here, where it's a tick box exercise, and maybe from the point of view of a regulator or an ombudsman or some kind of industry authority body, you've done what you need to do. But beyond that, it's not to put too fine a point on it, it's actually useless.
Yeah,
you're wasting your money.
It is, and that's the users assume if it's in my inbox, it's safe. I mean, I've actually had that said to me so many times, and so that's their perspective, whether you like it or not or anything else. They hear that you're spending loads of money and doing loads of security initiatives in your companies, and they say, well, like, should they're checking my email, they're checking my web traffic, they're checking all these things. So like if it's actually in my inbox now, my email inbox, it must be safe. And obviously we all know that's not the case, and that's why it's on. I suppose unfortunately you've got to protect the users from themselves, and that's why we've seen, just personally ourselves, so many people taking, well, we traditionally, as mostly would have been gateway customers of ours on the MX record side of things, whereas now most people are actually now taking and adding on our Inbox Protect service, because that does that real-time inbox protect, and retrospective rescanning. So anything that does actually get into the user's inbox should actually be caught. So you're stopping the users from actually damaging themselves, because if something now becomes weaponized, we will pick it up and deal with it. And users are assuming that's the case. So they're actually thinking you're much more capable than you currently are. And that's a real risk. And we also see, going back to the kind of generic content and not real life scenarios, like we do a lot of managed security awareness training and phishing training with our customers. And our guys will try and engage like a couple of weeks before, the campaign is supposed to run. And often, and I get it, people, you are all busy, But like, so they'll try and say, well, like what, we've got these ideas, or what would you like to do? Like, what have you seen? And have an engagement and actually do a really personalized campaign, and actually make it really kind of relevant to that organization or a department in that organization. And do you want it staggered over a number of days or hours? And how do you want it reported on, and all that kind of stuff? And do you want enrollment in the course, depending on if they engage with the content or not, and all that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, often it's just, oh, just do this, or just do, what do you recommend, and just do. But they whereas we will actually, if they want, no extra cost, actually personalize the whole thing with your logos, with things that have happened, things that are going on in the organization. Like it can be hyper personalized, and that's the kind of content people will actually engage with, because it's relevant. It's relevant to them. But unfortunately, again, go back to what Claire was saying, most of the training that's actually executed isn't actually that kind of training, you know.
And especially when we look at the time, you know, we say that most training happens on an annual basis, or maybe at a push twice a year, and that means it's easily forgotten. What would your suggestion be in terms of how this gets woven into a working year, where it's far more frequent to bring to people, so that cybersecurity awareness stays top of mind?
I mean, to be honest, most of ours, to be fair, are actually quarterly. We would see, and some of them actually, to be fair, do it monthly as well. But again, I suppose at least quarterly, because then you're dealing with, say, scenarios that have happened in the last quarter, or ones that you've seen in the industry, or we can recommend things, and it's relatively kind of, you know, relevant and contextually kind of relevant to the staff who are actually engaging with it, so they'll actually understand, actually, this is a threat that actually is aimed at me, and I should be aware of. You know, there's no magic bullet. I think you can overdo it as well if you're doing it every month. People will get annoyed. Probably they have to do so much like awareness training. So it's finding that balance for the actual organization, and your capabilities as well as an organization to deal with that number of attacks and that number of phishing events, and then the actual training on the back of that as well. Because usually what we do is we link training to the phishing exercise. So if they do engage with it, then there's a training kind of thing telling them about, like, that you engage with it, and then this is what you should have looked out for, and be aware of these things going forward. But yeah, it's a challenge for organizations, and it's not one size fits all. I think that's important to know as well. I don't think there's any, you know, it depends on the organization, their risk profile, the number of staff they have, the kind of staff they have, you know, all that kind of stuff's relevant.
So that's already sharing ways that need, you know, new approaches that need to be brought into how an organization is running their cybersecurity awareness training. You've spoken about, you know, the fact that it's not a one size fits all. I think that's really the piece that I took away the most from that. It's not as simple. I think this goes back to the monkey brain, where if someone just said, well, do cybersecurity awareness training once a quarter, then we all feel like, okay, I've ticked the box again, I've done it once a quarter, and it's all good to go. But that's not the case at all. So it really is a case of, it's not one size fits all, but then there are some things that we know could make a difference to the way awareness training is being run compared to how it should be being run, in the sense of wanting to get an impact, a positive impact from it, and certainly see those cybersecurity incidents going down. So the first piece we've got on the slide, the first element we've included on the slide here is around behavioural training. And I know on the previous slide, Lyle, we were talking about, instead of giving generic examples, really using real world examples of what is happening very currently. And we never ever at a loss of seeing what's going on. We were having a chat just before the webinar started around the big Marks and Spencer issue this year, which, as you were saying, actually came from a supply chain.
Yeah.
Not at all, not M&S themselves, but actually they were left completely exposed through something that happened in their supply chain. And here we've seen, even in Ireland so far, they're getting a little bit up and running again, but nowhere near to the degree that they would be. So do you want to take us through the different ways we can approach awareness training going forward? Yeah.
Now, I know we've got there zero trust, kind of trust nothing, verify everything. I mean, it'd be great to be able to do that, but that's, it's admirable. But, I think in reality, you have to have a balance, because you have to be able to work as an organization as well. I think, and from what I've seen, and the research actually suggests that the behavioral kind of real-time interventions is what really does actually change behavior, the nudge-based training. So what I mean by that is you're about to send like an email to somebody, and instead of maybe you've typed in, the person's name, but it's actually gone to a Gmail account, or a similar person's popped up as auto-filled by Microsoft to actually send it to someone that I shouldn't really go to, and you go to press send, and it pops up and says, are you actually sure you want to send it to that person? Because normally you would send this to these people, or normally you wouldn't have that attachment going to a non-work related email address like a Gmail or a Hotmail account or something like that. Or even if you're like working away yourself and you have a document that someone sent you and you just click download to bring it to your desktop, like that's against policy in a lot of organizations. And again, like popping up and saying, are you sure you want to do that? That's not a good idea because of X, Y, and Z. And also it's against company policy. So that nudge, as the people are actually doing things, just kind of giving them a little reminder that actually this is not it's either against the policy of the organization or it's bad security practice. That's the kind of stuff that does actually create a culture of security in an organization, and it really stops a lot of these things happening. Now, I've been talking about this for years with people, and everyone loves it. And we talk about it, and we say, like, okay, let's maybe do a trial and stuff, and then people say, like, it seems to be looks as a nice to have rather than a have to have, because they're already paying for security awareness training, doing phishing attacks and doing all the other kind of security awareness training that they do in the organization. And when it comes to getting budget for something else, doing kind of the nudge-based training in real time, they say, oh, it didn't make the budget, we'll look at it again next year. But I think that has to change, because as we've seen from all the data that we've had previously, it's not working. So if you want your security awareness training to actually work, I think the only way to augment your kind of personalized quarterly or whatever, security awareness training, you need to have that nudge-based training going on as well, because it does get into people's mind. It does actually change behavior. Oh God, yeah, that again. I better not do that. I better not download that file. It does actually work from a kind of an awareness and a behavioral kind of situation. And what that does then, it reduces the amount of exploits. So people are not getting compromised, and so you're actually going to save money from having dealing with ransomware attacks, phishing incidents, all that kind of stuff. Eventually it saves the organizations a lot of money.
Yeah, and it keeps you out of the newspaper.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. Just on the second point there about real-time interventions and AI-assisted prompts, which is part of the nudge approach, which people can follow, so that it gets them before they make a mistake. They click on the wrong link, right, or respond to an email that's a phishing email or whatever the case might be. I've had this question for so long. We know AI can good AI save us from bad AI? Is my question when it comes to cybersecurity, because we know so much of like TopSec yourself with the AI tools that you've got that really does a lot of good, and then we know that the bad actors or the malicious actors, they've got AI on their side too. So would you like to speak a little bit more about how we can harness AI to really work in tandem with human psychology?
Yeah, I mean, in this context, it's a little bit different. This is just kind of on the user side, kind of prompting them before they do something steady. It's not actually, identifying, using AI to identify a threat. It's actually saying, okay, you're doing something unusual here that's contravening, what it is. And so in that way, AI can be very, very helpful in actually stopping a lot of these bad decisions by the user. But we're also seeing, kind of going off topic a little bit, is that, AI is being used by a lot of the bad actors out there, but they're using it in a lazy fashion. So like what we've seen is we haven't seen any real increase in sophistication of the threats coming through, but what we have seen is increase in volume and in accuracy, you know. So like they're better, they are much better because of, I just mentioned about the business email compromise stuff. If someone gets into your account, it could be a very targeted email. But and also we've seen that the scale can be, they can automate this stuff much faster using AI engines and stuff like that to do it. But the actual, we've seen nothing particularly unique in actually, you know, that is like, you know, been getting around our engines, you know. So the AI guys, you know, sorry, not the AI guys, the bad actors, like there's a reason they don't have normal jobs, is that they want an easy life. So same as a burglar, like, you know, he'll come along and he sees 3 houses. One has a dog and an alarm system, one has an alarm system, and one has nothing. They're gonna go for the lowest hanging fruit. And I was even at a hacker conference last year, and they were actually talking about, like, you know, all the things they can do. But I said, like, how likely is a really concerted attack to be on an organization, you know, where they're actually, you know, you're not just doing drive-by stuff, like a lot of this, like 99.99% of all compromises are just drive-by stuff. They're throwing out lots of it. It's not personalized. And he said, oh, it's 0.01%. Someone has to pay me to, or there has to be some reason for me to go and target you. And I can do it and I can get into anybody, but like I have to do a lot of work on that, you know. So what AI has actually done for them is it's democratized it. It brought more people into the malware space with less knowledge, and allow them to make money without actually knowing what they're doing. They can just like rent these engines and go away and actually do it, you know. So so AI, I think, for the good guys is actually better than the AI for the bad guys. So at the moment, anyway, maybe that'll change in the future if they really do invest in doing something innovative, because they're usually just copying and taking engines that have been developed, as you said, by the good guys, and using them for bad things.
That really makes the case even stronger, actually, for the nudge-based training.
Yeah.
Because if you can use the tools available, the technology available.
Yeah.
So the key takeaways is that, you know, we're dealing with a human issue here, not so much a tech problem. The tech certainly enables the cybersecurity hacks and incidents to take place, but it's not actually where the crux of the problem is. It's actually with the human psychology piece, and that the training spend, even though it's in the absolute billions, has not resulted in a reduction in attacks. So, you know, this is both the challenge that we're facing as well as the opportunity that's available to us. Humans need real-time practical support, not tick boxes. Sadly, what was that second slide? 95% of organizations are actually investing in awareness training, but most of it does seem to be keeping a regulator happy rather than changing any kind of behavior to become effective.
Just reporting to the board, which is oh yeah, we're doing security awareness training, you know, so tick.
And that doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, the status quo, like, isn't working. Like I mentioned, like, users will take the path of kind of least resistance when it comes to work. And, you know, so you have to make it, I suppose you have to be careful how you do it. So like by having it something that actually is not too intrusive, but actually augmenting kind of and helping them learn, it's finding that balance and making it work. And I mentioned there about the prompt side of things. I mean, you can set it so like the people won't get annoyed. So like that every 10 seconds it's coming up with a prompt to tell them something. You can set a limit, like say, oh, I'll only do like 5 or something per day to them or something. But it's recording if they are doing other things. So you become aware that they're doing this bad behavior. You can go back to them and say, look, we need to have a chat about this. And also learn from your past. I mean, a lot of you people have a lot of data in regards to what your users are doing outside of the organization. And what I mean by that is, I know some people are using our breach detect service, which is our dark web monitoring thing, but I'm sure lots of other people have tools doing that, and looking at where your users are using their work credentials in non-work related sites, because that is another large vector giving people access to your organization, because they can pick up huge amounts of information from things like booking.com, airlines, airline websites, which are really targeted, like, and much more likely to be hacked than your own personal company website, because these are publicly available. They're used by millions of people all over the world, and they regularly, unfortunately, no matter how good a security they have, they get compromised. And so if your users are using their work credentials on those sites, you need to know about it. So using that data to actually then inform the training, because again, people will actually twig and go, oh God, I use my password in booking.com or, Aer Lingus or, British Airways or whatever it is. Then they'll actually be more attentive to actually, God, I didn't realize that I wasn't supposed to do that, and so it's using the data you have as well about your users to make that training more context relative to them. I think that's it, and I think if you do all the stuff we've talked about in the last two slides, that will definitely drive change and protect the users in some ways from themselves. Like, it's because the problem, unfortunately, is you and me. We're human. We're not logical all the time, and our monkey brain kicks in when it shouldn't. And that's the whole. And that's how the bad actors make their money, is they invoke our monkey brain. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, just thanking everyone for coming to the webinar. I'm not sure if there are any questions.
Yeah, I'll ask Rianka now. Rianka, is there any questions coming up?
Yeah, we actually have one, and it's asked by Claire. Some recent articles question whether fake phishing campaigns actually result in fewer incidents. They can also be an irritant for staff. Do you have any thoughts on that or any metrics on the success of the campaign?
So can you say it again? Sorry.
Some recent articles question whether fake phishing campaigns actually result in fewer incidents.
Oh, yeah.
And they can also be an irritant for staff. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Correct. So it's the ones where they're not very well done. So it's going back to those generic kind of, I won't say lazy, but because we're all busy, but the ones that are not that are not context relevant to what they're doing in their daily life. So if they're just seeing the usual old crap of voucher ones or Microsoft login pages or Amazon login pages or Google login pages or whatever, or all the stuff that people see at DPD, the travel ones, the delivery ones, all that kind of stuff. People will just go, oh God, this thing, and it does annoy them, and that they have to go through it and and actually do it. So I think it's making it more personalized, so they can see the value of it, and they can see, oh, actually, God, that I got caught by that, and so that suddenly wakes them up. And then rather than kind of stuff they're kind of, like you say, disgusted with because it's not really making an effort.
And also, when we talk about the monkey brain element, on one of the slides, I don't remember the number now, but we were talking about how we program to move for speed.
Yes.
We're not always engaging our critical thinking faculties just because,
yes.
Only when we're really prompted to do that. And I think that speaks a lot to the point you're making, where we just taking these very generic examples, and creating campaigns around that, rather than, especially to your last point about using the data you have on your individual users to make it much more applicable, so that using your critical thinking faculties doesn't feel like an overreach. It just makes you think about what you're seeing day in, day out in your own role in whichever company or organization you may be working for.
Actually, I have the questions here now, Rianka. I can look at them myself here. So Claire also has another question. Would the impact of nudges not lessen with time as they are repeated? I suppose the whole point is they probably wouldn't happen, because people will hopefully stop making those decisions, because for one reason they don't want to see the nudge, and so hopefully that they've actually learned. And I think we do seem to learn when, and I think when you get a fright.
Yeah, I won't click on a fake visa link again.
Yeah, it does actually burn something into you, into your head. Oh God, should I really be doing that? It's different than just being told something, So I actually think it's not an issue, because the nudges won't happen, because they won't be doing those repeated things. And also then as well, you can actually, as I mentioned, limit the amount of nudges they get for a particular thing, so it's not constantly popping up. Because but yet you still know from the dashboard how many times they've done it, and then you can actually go back to them and say, look, you're doing this you've been told about this like twice a day, and then we stop telling you because we don't want to annoy you. but you continue to ignore it. So, like, what's your problem? You know this is against company policy. You know it's a security risk. You know it's making us non-compliant. So you can have these more informed decisions with staff around that. So I hope that answers that, Claire. If not, just stick another great thumbs up. Blake has a question. How mature is that nudge model? Are there any issues you see with it? No, and it's about doing it right. Like, it's gotten way better over the last number of years, and the issues are about, again, like anything, it's doing it correctly and actually setting things like we just on the previous question, setting the number of alerts they actually get maybe per day or per event. Because again, you don't want to be annoying people and people storming into IT and giving you guys grief and saying, stop sending me those alerts. But it'll still but every time they do continue to do those kind of behavioral things and against policy, well, it's not nudging them. You actually know about it. So you can actually then at the end of the week, month, whatever, say, look, we nudge you once a day about this, you ignore it, you keep doing it, and again, like I said, what's the problem? So at least you have data, you have, it's completely visible, and it helps you actually deal with the issues. At the moment, most people don't know what people are doing and how effective it is. David, sorry, Blake, I hope that was, great, thanks. That was good. Yeah, Blake took a thumbs up. Davis, what services can we use to find staff logins being used on non? So that's like, I'm not sure. Maybe someone will correct me here. Maybe we'll get some information sharing. What services can we use to find staff logins being used on non-work related sites like Booking.com? The only time we know about it on your behalf is when they're actually compromised. Now, I don't know if there's other mechanisms other people have I don't know how that would be possible, actually, that because you'd have to be looking instead of Booking.com's database or someone like them to see how many of your users in there. So I doubt if that's going to happen. So we only know when it becomes an exploit, when it's actually being exfiltrated from Booking.com or LinkedIn or whoever it is out there with the big organizations that's obviously that millions of people use. So we can tell you then in like that minute, but we can't tell you before that, they're using it. The only way, I suppose, as an organization, you could tell if they were doing it at work and they were using the web browser at work. I'm sure there's ways. I'm not a web browsing expert, and that's not my area of expertise, but I'm sure you could identify that people are actually doing that and then saying, well, actually, they're logging into Booking.com with their work credentials. And you can see it's a work email address. So then you can maybe get it that way from another vector rather than from, because you won't be able to look directly into Booking.com's database. That would not be good. Hope that makes sense.
I think you missed a question, Niall, by Blake. How mature is the nudge model? Are there any issues?
No, I may answer that one.
Okay.
The answer to the Blake one, yeah. So any other questions? Anyway, like myself and Claire are always around, so feel free to reach out. There will be this recording will be available, so if you want it, and slides as well from Rianka, she's more than happy to send them out to you. And if you need anything from us, just let us know. Cool. No more questions? Nothing else? Okay, well, thanks for your time, guys. I appreciate it, and I appreciate giving us an extra 13 minutes there. I know it's supposed to end after half an hour, but I think it's an interesting topic because it's something I think somebody can walk into these things and correlate two different things. Like, we're spending loads of money on this, but actually it's not actually having a net effect over here, and that's where this came out of, like an interesting kind of observation. Good. Well, okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And have a good rest of your day. And be safe out there. See you. Bye.